Hey there, I just want to go over a kind of a do-it-yourself project that I did with a Stratocaster copy. It started from seeing this guitar. This is a guitar that was first released, I think, by ESP. It's called a Pickguard guitar, and these were only distributed in Asia from what I can see. But another company has picked it up in the US, and they produce one called the Travelcaster. And you can see that it's got the distinctive Stratocaster pickguard, but the guitar has been reduced to just that amount. So I've been thinking about this, and also I knew that I would need to repaint if I attempted this, and I wasn't sure what color that I would use. So I just decided that I'll pick the color when I go look at the paint and see what strikes me. The Strat copy that I have is a CF Martin Stinger, and these were made in the 80s and early 90s, and they're not anywhere near the quality of the CF Martin acoustic instruments by any means. So I wasn't real concerned about taking a saw to it or, spending some quality time with the power tool and this guitar. So what I did is I used just a good old Sharpie and a washer and traced around, sloppily, traced around the pickguard because I wanted to kind of mimic the spacing between the pickguard here in this area, and I wanted to mimic that over here on the top where we were going to be removing a lot of the body. So this is the profile that I kind of mapped out, and you can see that I'm planning to remove all of this material here. One of the things I did to make my life easier is I just cut this ground wire rather than unsoldering it. I only have like a 5-watt gun. Getting this piece of metal hot enough to solder is a challenge, and I knew that it would be easier when I went to put this back together if this was just stripped and cut. Also, I like to run with 4 springs on the tremolo. This makes it where it doesn't float at all. Notice on this guitar, the cream finish had yellowed significantly with age. It's a couple of, like a decade plus old. So this is the guitar with all the guts taken out. I like Strats because everything's mounted to the pickguard, so it's real easy to get in here and modify these things because you're just working with the body blank. You're not working with like a hollow body or any internal structure. Something else I did with my cutout is I wanted to make sure that I left a little bit of wood underneath this bridge because I do like to have that pulled down against the body so it stays in tune better. So I kind of extended these lines here to leave a little more wood than what the pickguard guitars do. Again, a testament to the quality of this instrument. You can tell from this routing pocket that this is some very high quality aged plywood. So I visited a friend. He's got a very well appointed wood shop, and we went straight to the bandsaw, and I made a few cuts, did a practice cut just to get a feel for the saw and understand how the blade behaved before I started cutting out this shape. I do want to point out that I'm fairly comfortable with power tools, and if you were doing this, you would want to make sure to give yourself a little room around your margin here and then sand that into the profile that you wanted, because it is going to leave some rough edges using a bandsaw. So I thought this would be a cool picture. Just put the pieces kind of roughly back together to show you the exploded view. So I did a practice cut here, and when I was cutting this, I really didn't have I knew I wanted this to be kind of straight, but you can see right here it's kind of rounded over, and I wanted that to end up to be straight. So I just cut this straight and just continued that line straight on through here, and then took my time going around the body. So this was the final shape that I had cut out before sanding and stuff. So, or this may have been after. So this is the shape I was after. Also in the shop there was a we had access to a belt sander, and I just went around and sanded the sides until I got them pretty much roughed in with just using the belt sander. You can see right here how I kind of rolled this piece real carefully. You can see how it's eating through the Bondo that was part of the original finish, and how that kind of fades from the original finish into the new cut. So I was trying to make that as smooth as possible. Then we spent some time with a roundover bit on a routing table, and we ran around all the fresh cuts to make it a kind of a radius that matched the original, so that we didn't have that sharp right angle on one side and the roundover on the others. Some things I'd point out is I did not route all the way to the tips of things. I kind of rolled it away from that because I didn't want to interfere with the neck pocket any. I also did a similar thing where the tremolo sits in the back. One of the problems I was going to have is I have no place to put the standard Strat jack. The Pickguard guitars normally will mount this on the back side of the guitar, but I didn't want to have the jack up against me while I was playing, so I wanted to put the jack in another place. So I had to find a bit that would make a hole large enough, and this is not in my friend's well-appointed shop anymore. This is in my garage. So I found this nice rusty 7/8 bit, and that seemed to work really well, and I punched a hole through the back just below the bridge. And I also knew I would need to have a place for some new strap button locations, and a long time ago I started using just nails as tiny bits, because my tiny bits would either get lost or broken and then lost. So I started just using little bits or using finishing nails with the head cut off, and just let friction do its job. So that's basically just burned into the wood, but it works. So then the next step was to remove the paint, and I read some reviews about this clean strip spray-on stripper, and it said it would work really well on guitars, and I do not believe that review. The instructions say that it should have the paint soft in about 15 minutes. It took more like an hour to get this soft enough to even scrape, and even then I was having to scrape so hard I was afraid of damaging the surface. And that's really not a recommended stripper for using on guitars. On typical household paint, like if you were stripping a piece of wood from a piece of furniture, it would probably work great, but guitar finishes tend to be a little more durable than most things that you paint. So I would recommend, if you're stripping a guitar, get the most aggressive stuff you can find. There is a clean strip product called Strip X, and it has warnings all over it that it's really dangerous to use, but it will get the job done much more efficiently than this. So I thought this would take, reading the instructions, it should have been in an hour. It was an hour to get this paint soft enough to scrape, and so I spent about 2 to 3 hours just cleaning up the front, back, and sides. And I did the part I was trying to strip the most was this little part inside here, because that's real awkward to get to. I ended up hand sanding that anyway because the stripper was not up to the job. And this is the lovely mess it makes whenever you apply it onto the guitar. It's neat because it kind of sticks and stays in place, but it's not good because it was not aggressive enough for a guitar finish. And there's some of my pictures of me and my frustration scraping on this where nothing is coming off. But I finally got the paint off of there. So you can see here I've got it down to the wood. I really didn't care about the interior. That's all going to be covered up anyway. And I tried to avoid getting any in the neck pocket here. I wanted to leave that unchanged. And there again on the back, Again, where the tremolo cutout is, I really didn't mess with that. So on the back, I got it down to the wood. Kind of added a bevel because we had a weird little part where the original bevel cut into that edge. So I added this in with the orbital sander. Not a big deal. Then we get down to the paint. When I went to the good old Home Depot, Satin Green Apple leapt out at me, and I saw this product. It's Rust-Oleum 2X, and it's got the paint and the primer mixed together, so that made the spray painting very pleasant, actually. So here is my fancy painting rig. I put a couple of sawhorses together and got a piece of wire out of a leftover piece of Romex, stuck it through the little hole that's beneath the neck plate, and just sprayed like crazy. I should have practiced on a test piece first, because I had to go in and use some steel wool to sand out some drips that I got on my first spray, and I was a little annoyed by that, but that's just how it goes when you're doing this DIY stuff. I wasn't going for a real like pro finish. I'm just trying to get some color on there. And I am, I did plan ahead to make it have a little bit of wear on the edges, so I wasn't real concerned about making a super glossy finish that was, an 1/8 of an inch thick. I was just trying to get some good color on there. So this is another picture of this as it's hanging there, drying after a couple of coats. So this is what I finally ended up with. I moved it into the house. It was a little cool outside, and I was wanting the paint to cure a little more before I started sanding on it. I wanted to bring it down from kind of a glossy to kind of a matte finish. I picked up some grade 0000 steel wool, which is super fine. So all this does is it kind of takes the gloss off of the finish, and it will even out some scrapes and scratches. Kind of spent a little more time in some places to get down to where a little bit of the wood was showing through in a couple of spots. Not like crazy, just a little here and there. One of the problems that I ran into, I had a nice little thin piece of metal to make a new jack plate out of it, and as I was drilling the hole for the jack to pass through, the bit caught it and it twisted it all to pieces. So I didn't want to go to the store to find something else, so I found this leftover hardware from a shelf, and I took it to a bench grinder, kind of made this leaf shape, and I kind of tried to make a leaf pattern on it, but that's hard to do on a bench grinder, so I just ended up with it's kind of really rough looking. You can see right here it's got a little bit of sparkle on it from the angle of the light, but it's just a chunk of steel that I ground on until I got it to be a shape that I could put in against the side of the guitar. Another thing is where it's mounted, there is a significant curve in the body at that point, so I spent a little bit of time with some pliers and a clamp and got this to the right shape to fit into that curve. So at that point, I was ready to put all the guts back together, so some assembly required right here. First job was to solder in the pieces that have been cut before, so I reattached the ground to the tremolo claw, and right here I soldered this to the faceplate where it's got the wires coming out for the input jack, or output jack rather. If you look at this very carefully, I wasn't paying attention and I put these on backwards and had to redo that, but it's not a big deal. So here it is with all its screws stuck back in it, and that's kind of the look I was hoping for. I really like how I preserved the neck pocket support here, and I extended the body a little bit here so that I could pull the tremolo block back against the body of the guitar. While I had the electronics out, I gave all the switches and knobs a good shot of contact cleaner, so they were a little bit grimy sounding. So anyway, threw some strings on it, and that is that. So there's my take on the Travel Caster.